Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
They're pretty disappointed that they don't get to play anymore. There's not really much that they can do.
Suspending youth activities in the Fraser Valley as COVID-19 spreads. Also,
they are more concerned about being separated from their family members than they are about COVID.
The call to ease visitor restrictions at long-term care homes from BC's seniors advocate.
And what's the buzz? So-called Asian murder hornets spotted in Abbotsford.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us online tonight. Concern in the Fraser Valley this evening as health officials try to control the spread of COVID-19. There are now 30 positive cases at a dance academy in Chilliwack.
And now Fraser Health is defining it as a super spreader event. And as Joel Ballard reports, that's causing other sports and recreation groups in the area to clamp down.
30 members of the Capella Dance Academy community here in Chilliwack have tested positive for COVID-19, including the studio owner. After coming down with a head cold, she got tested and immediately isolated. As soon as she received her results, she informed her students and their families and closed her studio, even though she says Fraser Health told her she could keep it open. This was back on October 27th, but the virus spread quickly. In a statement, the school's owner said, "I would like to offer my sincere best wishes to all my students, their families, and anyone else affected by this terrible situation." Yesterday, 6 days after the studio owner received her positive results, the Chilliwack School District sent out exposure notices to 10 schools. In a press conference today, Fraser Health confirmed those exposure notices are connected to the outbreak at the dance school, one they're calling significant.
But I want to emphasize that those are only exposures, meaning that a person with COVID-19 infection was present in the school during their infectious period. So far, there has been no transmission beyond the dance studio into the schools.
For those in the community, it's concerning.
So it's been 8 days since this exposure at my daughter's school, and I just received the letter last night. So that's 8 days of where was my daughter that now I have to worry that if she tests positive, where was she in the last week and a half?
Now today, a number of sports and recreation organizations here in Chilliwack have announced their activities will be put on hold due to the large number of cases here in the community. And that includes the Chilliwack Minor Hockey League. The president of the league says one of its members has tested positive in relation to the dance academy, and it will not risk the health of its players, especially since it's taking so long for the public to be notified, he says.
But at the end of the day, all the COVID protocols are all based on live, up-to-date information. And as long as our information is 7 days old, even though we're answering the COVID questionnaires and the protocols honestly, they're not being answered accurately because there's people walking around with positive tests or positive results right now that don't even know it.
Fraser Health said today that gyms and places where people are exercising together are at higher risk, adding they'll be watching these settings closely. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Chilliwack.
Now, Chilliwack is in the Fraser Health region, which accounted for more than 60% of today's new cases of COVID-19 in BC. Sadly, another 3 people in our province have died in the past 24 hours, bringing the total to 272. Active cases are now over 3,000 and at a record high. Just under 6,900 people are under active public health monitoring. Hospitalizations are up to 92, the most since late April. 22 people are in intensive or critical care. 299 cases were announced today across our province. As mentioned, 62% of those are in the Fraser Health region.
And as COVID cases continue to spike in the Fraser Valley, the health authority is opening up a second test collection center in North Surrey. The site opens up on November 12th to help test those experiencing mild symptoms. The new site will be located at 125 King George Boulevard near the Central City Shopping Centre in Surrey. When operating at full capacity, is expected to process between 500 and 800 tests a day. You can go in for walk-in testing every day from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Online booking will also be available when the new site opens. BC Seniors Advocate says 9 months into the pandemic, and it's time that those living in care homes get to spend more time with their loved ones.
A new report published today says months of isolation have harmed seniors' mental and physical health.
As Eva Yugwensenge reports, the call to lift visitor restrictions comes amid a new rise in COVID cases in the province.
They are more concerned about being separated from their family members than they are about COVID.
BC's Seniors Advocate says many residents living in long-term care are in crisis, experiencing weight loss, worsening moods, depression.
We need to remember that some family members have been separated for almost 9 months, and we need to decide how long we continue these separations.
Mackenzie is recommending the province loosen restrictions by allowing more frequent and longer visits to happen in private rooms, and by allowing more than one designated visitor. A step that's welcomed by families where only one sibling has been able to visit regularly.
A lot of people, it takes time to catch up on what they've been going through and to talk to them and explain what you're doing. And it just takes time. And I know for my mom, she just always felt rushed, like, oh, you're leaving already. So longer time is definitely really good.
Currently, the majority of visits are only once a week or less. Half the visits in long-term care only last 30 minutes. But the recent jump in COVID cases has some worried about lifting restrictions. The Fraser Health Authority is cautiously optimistic.
I think there's an opportunity with the provincial investments of $160 million to hire more people to ease visitor restrictions and at the same time still protect our vulnerable population in that setting.
Mackenzie says the added risk of transmission can be managed by screening visitors for symptoms.
These people are already visiting. We know who they are. They've washed their hands. They're wearing a mask. They've undergone health screening. They've had their temperature checked prior to each visit.
Long-term care homes can already allow for longer visits. It would take approval from Provincial Health Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry to increase the number of visitors. Eva Yugwensenge, CBC News, Vancouver.
While many businesses are going through hard times with COVID-19, it was a busy month for some realtors. The Vancouver housing market just posted its second best October on record. The Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver says October home sales were up 29% compared to a year ago. The board says this shows that people are rethinking their housing situation during the pandemic, having to spend so much more time at home and all. The bench price mark for Vancouver homes hit just over $1,045,000 in October. That's up 6% from this time last year.
2 streets in Richmond are being named after Constable Jimmy Ng, an officer who was killed on duty 18 years ago. The streets will be included in the redevelopment project at Richmond Centre. Constable Ng was responding to a call when he was hit and killed by a car in a street race. The driver was later convicted, receiving a 2-year jail sentence. Ng was sworn into the RCMP in 1996 and was survived by his parents, the now late Dr. Chris and Therese Ng. He attended high school in Richmond as well as the University of British Columbia. Okay, Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with the forecast. Joe, the atmospheric river definitely took up residence on the surface of our planet today. But I guess we should get used to it now that this is usually the wettest month of the year.
Yes, you're right, Mike and Tina. We get over 180 millimeters in the month of November. But Mike, thank you for your on-the-ground reporting last night for the start time of the atmospheric river. Yeah, I'll be looking for reports from now on, please. That was very helpful. We will need to get used to the wet weather and possibly the snowy weather. High confidence that this year is going to be a strong La Nina that lasts through to at least early spring. We talked to AccuWeather meteorologist Brett Anderson earlier today about the implications of a La Nina on our weather. I know we know it's directly snow and cooler temperatures, but here's some more details.
The sheer number of storms we're going to have, odds favor that we're probably looking at least 125 to 150% normal snowfall, if not 200%.
I've been following Brett's forecast for quite some time, and he studies La Ninas closely, so I was looking at his forecast, and yes, it does mean more snow generally when we see a La Nina. for our mountains. And often we'll see more snow events at lower elevation as well. But generally just more precipitation as our jet streams are shifted all over the world because of changes in temperatures in the equatorial Pacific. So it might just translate to more rain, more flooding events, more of these atmospheric river events we're dealing with right now. Generally cooler temperatures on average, but yes, hoping for more snow as well. And with a strong La Nina, I think we've got a pretty good shot. Let me just take you to a quick explainer with what's going on. The El Nina is when we normally get warmer than normal temperatures in the equatorial Pacific, but La Nina means cooler than normal temperatures, and that shifts jet streams all around the world. So yes, cooler and wetter for the West Coast, and we will definitely keep you posted on that forecast as we move through the winter. I will be watching for that first good snowfall here in Vancouver. We've already seen a good dusting on the North Shore Mountains. We are not getting snow with these kinds of snow levels. Our atmospheric river, aka Pineapple Express, bringing some mild temperatures in. 10 right now at YVR, and it's going to get warmer over the next 24 hours. The second push of moisture moving in overnight tonight, not nearly as heavy as what we saw today, getting upwards of 60 to 80 millimeters for the North Shore today. With that second push, most of Metro Vancouver looking more like 20 to 40 millimeters of rain. But just taking you through that timing, we will see the heavier rain move in overnight tonight, and I do have a soggy Thursday in our forecast. Few lingering showers for Friday morning, but I'm still thinking nice clear out Friday night for a very similar weekend ahead. Check out those overnight lows though, -2s in the forecast for Saturday and Sunday.
Getting chilly. Thank you so much, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, people in Abbotsford are being asked to report any sightings of the Asian giant hornet. One was spotted yesterday in the 7,000 block of Bradner Road. Single hornets were also found in White Rock last year and Langley earlier this year. But a nest has never been located. Last month, Washington state officials destroyed a nest in Blaine. The so-called murder hornets become less active once the colder temperatures arrive, and they will only attack people when their nest is disturbed. Anyone who finds one is asked to contact the Invasive Species Council of British Columbia.
The Vancouver Poppy Fund says it could be down tens of thousands of dollars in donations from poppy sales this year, all because fewer businesses and volunteers are participating in fundraising because of the pandemic. Many businesses across the Lower Mainland have either closed down or aren't willing to display poppy trays because of COVID-19. But reps from the Vancouver Poppy Fund say a number of hotels, banks, and office buildings are still willing to set up poppy trays. Though the fund is losing out on up to $7,000 in donations that are collected on Remembrance Day alone when crowds gather at the Cenotaph in Victory Square in downtown Vancouver.
Last year, the Coquitlam Legion raised just over $78,000 in this Legion alone. I'm not expecting to even get to half that this year. I'm hoping we're going to go more than half, but it's not like it would be in a normal year at all.
You can still get your poppies by walking into any Legion branch in Vancouver or by donating directly to the Vancouver Poppy Fund.
Alberta is reporting a sharp increase in the number of COVID-19 cases, and their update today also includes 19 new deaths. Over the last 4 days, the province averaged nearly 570 cases a day. Since Friday, 2,268 new cases tested positive for the virus. 167 people are being treated in hospitals, including 27 patients in intensive care. Edmonton has been hit the hardest, accounting for 100 of the total and 13 of the ICU cases. But Edmonton's R-value, the number Alberta uses to determine new infections caused by a person who already has COVID-19, is decreasing.
This is not good news. This is a problem. Of all the developments that have happened since Friday, the one thing that shows some promise is that Edmonton has reached an R-value of 1 over the past 5 days, showing that the measures have had some effect. It is a good...
And moving east to Winnipeg, the test positivity rate is dropping slightly, but still close to 9% provincially. And as the disease continues to affect lives, Manitoba's premier put out another call for help. As the CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, Brian Pallister is looking for volunteer pandemic workers.
As the COVID-19 surge continues to hammer Winnipeg, Manitoba's premier put out a call for qualified Manitobans to help out at swabbing sites and to conduct screening at hospitals.
Most of these tasks that we need here are not highly skilled, permanent civil service needs. They're surge needs.
The premier says it doesn't make sense to hire these workers.
In the interests of, frankly, taking advantage of the caring nature of Manitobans a bit, we want to access some help quickly. And it's not a time to permanently expand our civil service because of this pandemic.
The opposition accused the premier of running a pandemic response on the cheap.
It just seems like the premier's trying to get away with not spending any money, still trying to earn some positive media coverage, but not actually stepping up with those kind of direct actions that are going to help make the pandemic a little bit easier.
For the opposition,
the premier did promise to spend more money, not on health care, but on enforcing public health orders. He promised to reveal details about enforcement later this week. Pallister also acknowledged this week his government hasn't done enough on contact tracing, but he bristled at the suggestion it didn't prepare for this fall's COVID surge.
The government didn't invent COVID. The government didn't bring it here. And the government can't stop people from transferring it to each other either. All we can do is our absolute best to react and to prepare to react.
The premier again urged Manitobans to offer their thoughts on a late-night curfew that could be imposed on Winnipeg. A survey went online today. The premier acknowledged the survey is not scientific. He says it's a way to get some sense about what Manitobans are thinking because they have to buy in to any new kind of enforcement. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Today, Ontario recorded its largest single-day case count since the start of the pandemic. The new high comes as the Ford government released its framework for how they will impose COVID restrictions in different regions. Ontario has moved to a color-coded system: green, yellow, orange, red, and gray. The green tier has the least restrictions, but those regions still must maintain small groups, enforce mask wearing, and keep to social distancing measures. For yellow, restaurants and bars are open, but with restricted hours, and the number of people at gyms and indoor spaces will be limited. For orange, restaurants and bars will still be able to operate indoors, but will have to abide by stricter restrictions. Enforcement and fines will also be heightened. As for the red category, it's a return to modified stage 2. There is no indoor dining, but gyms are allowed to stay open. And the final and most severe step is the gray group. This would mean the region is returning to a full lockdown, similar to what we experienced here in March. But as Mike Crawley explains, some doctors say the new measures are too weak.
It's 8 months into the COVID-19 pandemic, and Ontario has a new way to communicate public health restrictions. It means no more stage 1, stage 2, or stage 3. Instead, it's green, yellow, orange, red, or lockdown. Ontario's new categories for COVID-19 measures in each public health unit.
An early warning system with clear criteria to help inform when restrictions should be tightened or loosened on a regional basis.
When the system takes effect this weekend, most regions will be in green or yellow, with largely the same measures as they've faced since June. Peel, York, Ottawa, and the Eastern Ontario Health Unit are set to be classed as orange. Toronto becomes an orange zone November 14th and keeps its current restrictions until then.
We need everyone to recognize that risks remain, especially in crowded places, in enclosed spaces, and where there is close contact.
In the orange zones, indoor drinking and dining will be permitted in bars and restaurants. Last call is moved up to 9 p.m., and the maximum number at a table is 4. It means the province is loosening restrictions in the hot zones, even though today's count of new cases hit a record high.
We look at the numbers, there are some positive areas. We see a little bit of a flattening.
A month ago, my sources told me the province was considering a color-coded system for COVID-19 alerts. When I asked Premier Ford about it at the time, he said it would be too confusing for the public.
Regions would not move into the red zone unless their weekly case numbers shoot higher and test positivity rates exceed 10%. Some doctors think those thresholds are set too high.
If you're really persistently, a whole region is greater than 10%, there is a big problem there.
With the metrics as they are now, that would allow for pretty significant spread in a community before measures are imposed.
The framework that was released by the government today sets the stage for ongoing spread of COVID-19, future lockdowns, lack of economic recovery, and unnecessary illness and death.
Mike Crowley, CBC News, Toronto.
For his part, the Prime Minister says the window of opportunity to bend the curve is fast closing. And our country's top doctor is offering some new advice on ways to slow down the spread of the virus. CBC's David Cochran has the latest guidance on masks.
Winter is coming, seemingly already here for many parts of Canada. And as people start to bundle up, new advice on what to wear on your face.
To improve the level of protection that can be provided by non-medical masks or face coverings, we are recommending that you consider a 3-layer non-medical mask, which includes a middle filter layer.
A 3-layer mask with a proper fit to cover the mouth and the nose. The 3rd layer in the middle, a fabric strong enough to act as a filter, flexible enough so you can breathe easily.
Well, it will increase different ways of catching droplets of different sizes. So, it may not filter everything, but a well-fitted non-medical mask will filter a lot of the different droplets of different sizes.
There are instructions on the federal government's website so people can make their own or know what to buy. New guidance as COVID cases reach new levels across the country.
Right now, this virus is being given the chance to spread. It's being given the opportunity to grow. I know that's hard to hear, but the numbers are showing us that our window to turn this around is closing fast.
Closing fast as the virus rages in the United States and as many European countries go back into lockdown. The new mask guidance isn't just because cases are surging, it's that increasingly cold weather means we will be increasingly indoors, in closer contact, at greater risk of infection. David Cochran, CBC News, Ottawa.
I want to show you a live shot now of a ballot counting station in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania tonight. It is just coming up on 9:25 Eastern Time there. A very closely watched state tonight. The polls there have closed. 18% of the ballots counted at this point of the evening.
And the window is closing for our neighbors in the western states to get their votes in for this U.S. election as they decide who will be the next president of the United States.
Just across the border in Washington state, more than 1 million ballots have been scanned in King County for day of election results, breaking a record for voter turnout.
The county's elections director says there are 1.45 million registered voters in the region. They've reached nearly 80% voter turnout and are hoping to get up to 90% by the end of the night. More than 1 in 4 voters in the state lives in King County, which includes Seattle. The cutoff for people to vote is 8 p.m. tonight. And Americans living in Canada will be watching the U.S. election very closely tonight.
Especially the group Democrats Abroad, which says it's been pushing for more expats to vote this time around.
We know that what happens in the U.S. impacts us here. A good example of that is climate change, right? We've seen these crazy wildfires in California, and we had the smoke here. It's impacting us, and we need an administration that believes in science and believes in, moving forward in the right direction for its people.
Phillips says of the more than 600,000 Americans living in Canada who are eligible to vote, only 5% cast a ballot in the last U.S. election. She says that number has jumped up this time around, with 80% of the group's membership voting by mail-in ballot. And instead of in-person viewing parties across the country, the group is going to be watching the results together tonight, virtually, of course, with a Canada-wide Zoom party.
All right, and that just about wraps things up for us here online.
Yes, it does, but CBC has more coverage of the U.S. election on all platforms tonight. The CB News special America Votes is live right now. You can watch the Nationals' Adrian Arsenault alongside Andrew Chang and Ian Hannamansing on CBC Television, CBC News Network, and CBC Gem. Coverage is also streaming online.
And also on radio. Radio listeners can also tune in for a show hosted by Susan Bonner and Pia Chattopadhyay on CBC Radio 1.
Our regular newscast, of course, preempted on television by the election tonight, but we will be back tomorrow for a full hour show at 6 o'clock on television and online.
And you can always find any information online, cbcnews.ca/BC. Have a great night.
Good night.